Hello everybody, Jose Rodriguez here. It is the 18th of April. Today is actually tax day in the United States. They extended it from the normal day, which is the 15th, to today for some odd reason. I don't know why it wasn't yesterday, but I do remember having gone to the post office to send a package, and there were lines of people with their envelopes. Late as always, people wait till the last minute. Anyway, today we had a great day. I hope you got to see the video of our little trip downtown to Union Station in Washington, D.C. Nathan had been waiting to do that. He's done it in the past, but he was a bit younger at the time. And so he has been anxiously waiting. He wanted to have his own, let me pull him out, Metro card so that he could ride the Metro himself, doing everything himself without any help from us big people. What a boy. Anyway, he had a blast, we had a blast, and we enjoyed every minute of it. But now I'm back, and I've been following a thread on the Printer Knowledge Forum, that is printerknowledge.com. And basically an individual had a 1400, an older Epson, they call it SP 1400 and Stylus Photo 1400, and he had a bad black nozzle clog, and he was trying to clean it, but nothing he did would work. Regular cleaning cycles would not do the job. Anything he did was not doing the job to clear this clog. Of course, he did nozzle checks, blank, no ink coming out of that channel. So he's trying to do the syringe tube method, where you actually remove the cartridge, and there's even an attachment that you can buy that you can replace the cart with it, and then attach a syringe to it and inject cleaning fluid directly into the printhead. Well, that may work, and that may kill your printhead, and I will explain a little further. But anyway, to no avail. So lots of people were providing, their input until Michael Chen from Precision Colors came in, and he shone some light into the subject. And before I get into everything that he discussed, let me just talk a little bit on my own. I'm going to go ahead and paraphrase his explanation. And by the way, the 1400, being an older printer, had a very durable printhead, one that can withstand a relatively high amount of abuse by the owner. Today's sophisticated, much more sophisticated printheads are a lot more delicate, so they will not withstand the cleaning efforts that we used to apply to these older printers. By the way, what you're hearing is my Pro 1 printing 20 photographs for the school, the drama club. I did their group shot the other day. So excuse the clicking and whirling noises you might hear in the background. Let's make believe that this is a nozzle tubule, okay? So I'll use this straw as an analogy. This is the top where the cart sits. Forget about it. It's a lot more intricate than this, but this will simplify the illustration. So ink enters through here and emerges through here. So this would be, imagine hundreds of these straws, each representing the orifice of one of those nozzles, and the plate is located down here. So as it travels across the paper, little droplets of ink are being spit out and deposited onto your photo paper. If you do not use your printer for days on days on days, you will get possible ink drying out on the surface of that nozzle plate. And so when you come back and you attempt to print, that dried ink will not allow liquid ink to pass through. All right, so that is a common nozzle clog due to just common drying of the underside of the nozzle plate. And that can be because on older printers, you had to literally turn them off so that the printhead would actually park on top of the purge pad or the so-called parking station, many names for the same item in your printer. Basically, it has a rectangular gasket that can spring up automatically, and it seals the nozzle plate, creating a nice high moisture environment which would prevent drying. If you do not turn your printer off, these older printers would simply allow the printhead to remain floating above that purge pad, and so air can then enter and dry it. As you let it sit there for weeks sometimes, as many of you do, including myself sometimes. And so when you come back and you try to print something, you're going to get lots of weird banding, you're going to get color shifts, and basically it's due because the channel is not providing ink due to that dried ink. Now, you do a nozzle check, you see that in fact you have some missing nozzles. And on the Epson, it actually represents each actual nozzle as a little line. On a Canon, it's a different story, but we're talking about Epson here. So you run a cleaning cycle. That cleaning cycle, the way it operates, is not forcing ink through that tubule. It is actually using the purge pad to attach itself to the bottom of the printhead, and then by suction, pull ink out. So if there's a dry deposit on the outside, that will usually detach that, okay? And that will succeed in clearing that so-called clog. However, I knew a guy that left his printer, and not a cheap one, in his attic for over a year. What do you think he experienced when he powered it on? Massive clogs. And who knows where these clogs actually materialize. Was it just a simple clog of the nozzle plate surface due to dried ink? Or was it something more treacherous, like an internal clog or an internal deposit of something, some precipitation of something in the inks? Those are extremely difficult to clear. Now, so the way to clear one of these, of course, is to use a cleaning cycle. And if that does not work, what I would do is let the printer rest overnight, come back, run another cleaning cycle, and then follow that with a nozzle check. You should have some improvement by that point. And by the way, keep and date all of your so-called nozzle checks. That way you can use them as reference to determine whether you are experiencing a progressively better result as you continue trying to unclog your printer. Now, if this does not clear it, and indeed it is due to just massive deposits of dry crud on your nozzle plate, then you have to resort to a more invasive method. And the way you do that is you have to park your printhead over a folded strip of paper towel soaked with a cleaner such as Windex, or an actual proprietary cleaner that you can buy from a third-party ink company. Inkjet Mall has, of course, PSO Flush. I believe Marut in the UK has Magic Bullet. Both of these are extremely good at clearing clogs and dissolving dried ink. So let's go ahead and get set up to be able to park our printhead on top of that folded paper towel. And basically what you have to do is you take a strip of paper toweling. I like the ones that give you the half sheet, because you can basically fold it into twice and get a little strip about that big with about 4-ply. 4-ply sometimes is a little bit too thick, so maybe you have to tear off one of the layers and get yourself a 3-ply layer of paper towel, but only about 1.25 inches wide. What you do is you're going to have to unlock your printhead. Well, that's really difficult to do unless you know how. You power on your printer, and the minute that the printhead detaches from the lock position and starts to make a movement, you pull the power plug off. If you can remove it from the back of the printer, do that. That's a lot more convenient. If you have to pull it from the wall or the power strip, you go ahead and do that as well. And that will then stop all action. The printhead will be detached from the capping station or that parking station, and will allow you to move it left and right manually. You will then move the printhead to the right. You will lay down that strip directly over the plate, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you look in there. And there's a lot of videos on YouTube about doing this. I don't have to rehash the subject because it's been done multiple times before. So at this point, you're going to, with a pipette or a syringe with a needle, you're going to basically not soak, not drown, but wet that paper towel with Windex. You're going to flatten it nice and flat, and you're going to move the printhead, basically sliding it over that folded strip of paper toweling that is now well wetted with Windex or any other proprietary solution you want to use from a provider. You're going to let it sit for a few hours. If the strip begins to dry, you're going to keep it nice and moist. You can also move the head back and forth a bit just to wipe the bottom. The surface of the plate is relatively durable, and so this wet paper towel business is not really going to harm it in any way. When you think you have done it for enough hours, sometimes overnight, you're going to then slide it to the right. You're going to see tons of gunk on that paper towel. Remove it. Slide it to the right all the way to the capping station. Plug the wire back into the wall or the back of the printer and power up your printer again. The printer is going to go through some gyrations, possibly run a cleaning cycle. When it is done doing that, run another nozzle check and then compare that to the one prior to that. If you're lucky, you will have a nice cleared printhead with all of the nozzles firing. And the moral of that story from then on, print often. Do not abuse your printer by letting it sit for weeks unused. If you are one of those guys or gals who says, oh, I do not use my printer too often, don't get a printer. Send your work out to be done by a professional lab. You just cannot maintain a printer the way it should be maintained so that it gives you trouble-free service every single day. All right, now let's talk about a more serious type of clog. Let's assume that there's a bit. Let's assume this is your nozzle tubule. We got an inch's worth of dried crud in there. How are you going to clear that? All right, there's no way that that simple, relatively passive method of the wet paper towel, that's not going to work. That is just not going to do it. So people have resorted, and this is the last resort, okay? You only do this if everything else fails. You could, of course, load a cart with cleaning fluid and try to, do cleaning cycles, and hopefully that will dissolve it somehow. But think about this. You have a situation where you have a plug of crud, and that mild suction that the capping station or purge station is going to apply to try to pull ink through, in a cleaning cycle, it's not going to work, because that little pile of crud that's blocking that tubule is going to just laugh at it. Okay, nothing's going to get past that. You can pull all you want and nothing's going to get past that. So that's not going to work in that case. What you need to do after you have exhausted all your other previous methods, and there are many, again, look them up on YouTube. I'm not going to rehash every one of these different methods, but here's the most drastic one. And I even have a little adapter. I should have brought it over here for the demo. But basically, it just snaps into place, and it has a little nipple that you can attach your syringe directly to it. And then you have a syringe loaded with cleaning fluid. And at this point, what you're going to do is you're going to attempt very carefully, you're going to try to inject some of that cleaning fluid into the printhead stem. Okay, that's the stem that the cartridge of ink mates with. So you're going to connect this device, or just a syringe with a piece of tubing, and you're just going to connect it to that little stem. If you cannot gently allow any ink to enter, in other words, it's completely blocked, leave it alone. You did get a little bit of fluid in there. Okay, you did. So what you do next is you're going to pull back and create a vacuum. When you have something blocking a passageway, The way to actually force fluid in there without actually using force is to pull back, create a vacuum, and then let go. Some fluid will actually go in there. That is the premise of vacuum filling some of the third-party cartridges that I use and are being sold regularly. You have to do the vacuum type priming. Otherwise, there's no way you can get ink in that priming chamber. So, and you need that to be able to print with those types of carts. So you pull back, create a vacuum, again, assuming that no ink can get through. And if you try to push down, you get nothing. You cannot push anything through that clog. So you pull back, create a little bit of a vacuum, and let go. Again, this is going to take you days to do this, but eventually you will get enough of that cleaning fluid that will start to dissolve. And at some point you will be able to pull back, go forward, pull back, go forward, pull back. And by using this back and forth slight pumping action with that syringe, you will eventually clear that clog. And at that point, you should be able to just inject several ml of that cleaning fluid and collect it under the paper towel you should have folded over that printhead, just like you did with the wet paper towel method. You're going to have a paper towel underneath that printhead to collect all of the fluid that you're going to generate by trying to pump it through the printhead. I have never had that problem. I have always been able to, after a while of back and forth, very gentle pumps, pulling and pushing, pulling and pushing, pulling and pushing, eventually it becomes dislodged. You do not want to push crud through those nozzles. You will actually physically damage the periphery, the little hole, the internal edge of that hole. You will harm it. It will cause a deviation of that particular droplet as it's being sprayed, and it will show up on your prints. Okay, so what you want to do is basically pull back, and you can pull back and you will see crud on your syringe. Take it out, push it out, wash it, load some cleaning fluid again, and try that. Try to push a tiny bit and then pull back, and eventually what you're going to do, you're going to remove that clog, but backwards. You don't want to push it through. Okay, that will cause even more problems. So that's a very, very interesting method, and this gentleman is going to go ahead and try that. And again, most situations, say we go away for a 2-week trip and come back and our printer has a few clogged nozzles and we just run a cleaning cycle and that's all it needs. But for those situations where somebody either buys a used printer that was abused and has to revive it, there's a lot of people that do that, including myself. Or you just unknowingly or purposely ignored it for a year, you might have to resort to that type of drastic technique to clear your clog. And of course, Epson printheads are a little bit more capable of taking that kind of abuse. I wouldn't think of doing it on a Canon printhead. If it's to the point where something like that is actually occurring, you just buy a new printhead. You just don't deal with trying to clean it, because often you will do more damage than good. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me take a sip of coffee. It's a touchy subject, that of clogs. Often, if you are refilling, you really don't have a clog. You have just air because of your badly refilled or primed cartridge. And so you're introducing air into the system. And often it's very difficult to push a bubble of air in one of these lines. The suction is just not high enough to do so. So what you have to do is you have to utilize a power clean. It's a more powerful suction, and that should remove the air out of the system, and you should have a nice cleared printhead. Assuming, of course, that it was actually just air creating the appearance of a clog. Because when air gets in the way, air doesn't print, right? So you will get nothing but blank lines on those particular nozzles that are plagued by that air. And so how to prevent that? Prime your cartridges properly. If you're using refillables on an Epson printer, and I'm talking about printers that use cartridges that ride on top of the printhead assembly, You have to keep them primed. And often, this is what happens. I'll tell you a little secret so you guys know and can prevent this. The chips that are loaded in these refillable carts, so-called auto reset chips, often the cartridge holds, say, 13 ml, but the OEM may have held 15 ml, so say 2 ml more. That chip, that so-called auto reset chip, reports as if the cartridge actually had 15 ml, just like the OEM, but you only have 13. So if you let that cart go to the point where the chip declares it as empty, you actually drained out the priming chamber dry, and you got nothing but air. You got an empty cart, and the chip still says you have a little bit of ink in it, and actually it is empty. So the way to prevent this completely is when one hits low, top them all off. Don't worry about resetting them. They will reset themselves. But top them all off so that they will actually have a lot more ink when the chip says, hey, I'm empty. Or no, you're not. You still are 3/4 full. So then you remove it and you pop it back in. And it will reset to full. But it has been fooled because you topped them all off. And that's the only way you can prevent this problem. Otherwise, you will be having to reprime your cartridges every single time after they go empty. It's a pain in the neck. I know how to do it even afterwards, but the idea is to prevent this from happening. And so once you prime them during the initial installation, the initial refill, make sure you top them off as you use your printer. This applies to R2400s, 2880s, the R3000s that use refillable carts, the P600 as well. All of these cartridges tend to over-report the amount of ink that's actually in the cart. When they reach empty, you've been empty a long time ago. So keep that in mind. That is something that a lot of people do not know. And when that problem plagues them, boy, they have no idea what's going on. All right, thank you once again. More subscribers, daily basis. We're doing good. Every month I'm making a couple more dollars than the previous month, so that's really great. All right, thank you once again. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. Patreon.com/jtoolman. Don't forget about that. I'm getting a lot of support from that, and that's awesome. I appreciate that immensely. So, until the next time, happy printing, everybody. And I will be doing a full Lightroom video on the computer. Complete Lightroom process and workflow. It's going to take me a while. I know I also promised a Pro 1 one. And gosh, I've been working hard on that, but it's coming. Don't worry about it, folks. Oh, in the next video, directly after this one, I'm going to tell you a little bit of what's going on. All right, it's not good news, but we should be able to solve it. All right, so thank you once again. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. Thank you, everybody. Happy printing. Bye-bye.